Welcome to the Rebound Rundown. I'm your host, Paul Fritschner. This is your daily digest college basketball show that covers everything you need to know about your favorite team. From game previews to recaps to press conferences and breakdowns, we have you covered. Every Monday through Friday with your morning commute, wherever you get your podcast, and make sure you subscribe on YouTube.
Great to be joined by Geoff Grammer of the Albuquerque Journal, beat writer for the University of New Mexico. Nobody covers this program closer than Geoff, so I appreciate you taking a few minutes today to talk about Coach Richard Pitino and his move over across the country to Xavier. You did a great podcast the other day on your show with Coach Pitino, wrapping up his time in New Mexico. And I wanted to take this opportunity, Geoff, today to talk about what Xavier is getting in Coach Patino, what kind of a person he is, what kind of a coach he is, and what he's done with this New Mexico program over the last 4 years. So I appreciate taking a few minutes. And if you could just recap from your perspective what this last 4 or 5 days has been like for you, we'll start there.
Not unexpected entirely. I will say that look, when he got here 4 years ago, he had just been fired, basically a 24-hour unemployment for him. And he took the New Mexico job almost sight unseen. He had been to Albuquerque for an NCAA tournament when they had hosted a regional that Louisville played in, I want to say in like 2005 or something like that, when his dad was coaching. He wasn't yet on the staff even. And he watched it. He had been in the pit, which is the arena that is pretty well known for. It's really what Lobo basketball is probably most known for, because they haven't exactly had a deep run in the tournament ever, that kind of stuff. But he took over a program that was a 6-win team, and only 4 of those were against Division I teams in the COVID year, and he turned it in 303 in the net. There were 22 in the net last year and something in the 40s this year, and went from 6 wins that he took over to 15 or 13 wins, then NIT, which was the first postseason in 9 years for the program, which was the longest drought that this program's ever had, at least since the 60s. The 60s here is where they kind of consider the modern era of Lobo basketball, is when Bob King, the guy who the court here is named after, took over the program, and Lobo basketball sort of became what it is in the 60s. So since the 60s, they had never had a 9-year drought. He ended that with the NIT. Then last year it was the NCAA tournament, and then this year it was a Mountain West championship and an NCAA tournament win. And he kind of brought this program back from about 12 years of declining attendance and some fan apathy, which can just kill a program. And fans here loved him because he was funny, he's sarcastic. I think you guys are about to find that out. He is a very self-deprecating, very self-aware kind of person. I think this past year, more than even his previous 3 here, he became so comfortable in his own skin. Like he knows he's Rick Pitino's son. He will tell you guys in the opening presser, whenever that may be, that he doesn't strive in any way or expect in any way to become Rick Pitino. His dad is one of the 3 coaches he considers the 3 best coaches of all time. He considers Krzyzewski, Wooden, and his dad the 3 best college coaches of all time. He's in the Naismith Hall of Fame. He doesn't have any expectation of becoming his dad. He knows he gets asked about his dad all the time, and his dad was one of the 2 biggest influences on his basketball career. But he was so comfortable in his own skin this past year because I think he became, even when he was at Minnesota for 8 years, it almost seems like here at New Mexico, he became his own coach a little bit more. Now, he gets asked about his dad all the time, and he will. He doesn't shy away from it, but he almost became, I think, a little bit more of his own person, his own coach a little bit while he was here. What he said on the podcast that I had him on yesterday, it was pretty telling. By the way, doing an exit interview with the local media after you leave the program isn't something a lot of people will do, but it kind of speaks to his comfort that he has in this community and around this town and sort of where he's at right now. He was pretty open and transparent that he wanted to kind of rebuild the program, but he was never shy about saying, yeah, look, I'm taking calls. If people call me, I want my players to improve their value. I want if someone wants to call me and talk to me about a potential job or whatever, I'll take the call and listen. And in this case, he certainly got back home closer to his family, his wife's family. He's in the Big East, certainly closer to his roots, and got a lot more money because of it too. So all that kind of stuff kind of led to his decision. It wasn't as much a get out of town, leave the UNM Lobos. He wasn't thrilled about where the Mountain West is going to be in 2 years when the Pac-12 and Mountain West kind of split up and the Pac-12 tries to rebuild itself. He wasn't thrilled about what was going to happen then, but it wasn't an active pursuit of his to get out of town. His name was on every list, as you guys know, and he was taking calls, but he was weirdly open about it. There's not a lot of coaches out there that'll go ahead and tell his fan base, yeah, I talked to Virginia, yeah, I talked to Villanova, I talked to VCU, I talked to Utah. He had a conversation with at one point. He did all that here because he was so comfortable with where he was at with things, and it was refreshing. It was a refreshing 4 years to cover because he's sarcastic as hell, and he's a funny guy. His dad will tell you that. Everyone who knows him will tell you he's one of the funniest people you're probably going to know. It's a dry sense of humor, so there will be times that I don't think people will understand it at first or understand that he was making a joke. But he's good on Twitter. He's good at pressers, man. You guys, I think, are really going to enjoy him.
Maybe nothing speaks better to that than when you're watching the Red Storm Rising episode with him and his dad the night before New Mexico plays at St. John's. They're sitting in the bar in New York City, and he's asking about whether Kadari Richmond's going to play in the game or not. And Rick looks at him and says, I don't know if he's going to play, and if he does, it's going to come off the bench, and he's going to come off the bench. And Richard looks at him and he goes, no, you're lying. And then the immediate cut to the next scene is Kadari in the starting lineup. And I think that just encapsulates everything that I've heard and everything I've seen, what I've listened to over the last couple of days, podcasts, everything else. It feels to me like that was a pretty appropriate scene to summarize their relationship and who he is. And
that Patino family, by the way, I got to know some of them as well. First of all, Patino's family, Richard Pitino's immediate family, his wife, Jill, his three children, especially this 10-year-old Jack, his son is a ball boy here that just, it's weird. And again, I mentioned this in the podcast. I don't quite understand it. I don't know that Richard even quite understands it, but this town just fell in love with Jack. They were trying to figure out ways that, look, Richard, we get it. You're leaving. We wish you wouldn't, but as long as Jack stays, we're good. And Jack Patino runs Albuquerque right now, and he's going to be missed as much as Richard is going to be missed. But his family, this Patino family, the siblings, watching this year where dad's back in basketball, he's not, overseas or in whatever hiatus he was in for a while, as you're well aware. He's back in basketball, winning a conference championship, being conference coach of the year in the Big East. Richard has resurrected from, 8 years of whatever Minnesota was, being a lower level team in a big conference, but not one that can consistently compete regardless of who the coach is. I know Nico Medved, by the way, really well, and I wish him luck, but that is a tough program. I digress. The Patino siblings enjoying this run of Richard and Rick. They had two family chats. One that Rick was not allowed to be in during St. John's games as Chris Patino, the brother I talked to and did a story earlier this season on, told me, like, we made mistakes, we learned. You don't put Rick Pitino in the same family chat during St. John's games when all the siblings are watching and texting and saying things like, oh, they're going to kill him, this is great. And then the other team comes back and wins or something. And he's scrolling through all these messages during the game of all these things that were said that you don't want to see after a loss or something like that. Same thing with Richard. Richard's not on the family text that Rick is in, who became a huge Lobo fan, by the way. And it was funny talking to them about how much they enjoyed this year. And it was the first year that it really lined up like that, where both Richard and Rick were having the season, a really special season that both of them had at the same time. And one of the funniest takeaways I had from that was that Rick Pitino's commentary in the family text while they're watching a UNM Lobo game. Hall of Fame coach, knows basketball better than any of us listening, right now or talking right now are ever going to know. And when it comes to the commentary and the family chat, it's not like, oh, they really should have set a ball screen there. I can't believe they're playing pick and roll coverage like that. It's stuff like, what the heck is that referee doing? Or like, why is he even shooting that? What a horrible shot. It is the lowest level fandom, yelling from the stands kind of, banter as you could get, because he put on his dad hat. He put on his fan hat and his dad hat, and he kind of they all enjoyed it together quite a bit, and it was refreshing every time I saw Richard Pitino on social media, especially just poke back at Rick Pitino and have fun with it, and he makes fun of his dad quite a bit. It's you guys are going to enjoy it, and it's going to be pretty epic with them in the same league. The banter that goes on between the two of them.
What should Xavier fans expect from a Richard Pitino team on the court? And I know over the years he has had very different teams, and he's adapted his style to the roster that he's assembled. But in general, you're starting to see some trends, at least in the last few years, over how he plays, especially offensively. But what can Xavier fans expect on the court?
I think ideally, and he was able to do it here through some transfers when he first got here. His two big foundational pieces were Jamal Mashburn Jr., who followed him from Minnesota to New Mexico, and then his first other get when he got to New Mexico was Jalen House, the son of former NBA player Eddie House. Those two guards really kind of set the tone for an offense that was guard oriented and fast paced. A little undersized for 3 years. Donovan Dent came in that second year and just finished his third now at UNM. Is about to cash in quite a bit himself. But it was really guard oriented, but he does need a big man, preferably a big man that can play a little bit of defense, and then it all sort of falls into place. I would say if he had his way about a roster, and he doesn't always, sometimes, transfer portal, you don't get the pieces you want, or the high school kid you did recruit doesn't necessarily always pan out. But if he had his way, I think it would be a lot of what he did this year, which was, let's be a top 5 tempo team in the country. Let's put up a shot in 8 seconds if we can. He doesn't get mad at missed shots. He frankly rides players a little bit longer than some fans would like sometimes when they're not hitting shots, as long as they're good shots. I know coaches say that all the time, but then they'll pull a guy if he's missed 3 or 4 in a row sometimes, right? Richard would ride it out. If they're taking good shots, he promised the players, look, the green lights are there. As long as it's a good shot, I know they're going to go in. You're not in the game if you're not making them in practice, and I don't trust you. So I think he is going to be a fast-paced, I don't know about top 10 every year in tempo, but this year he was top 5 in tempo. I think that's what he would like. Some ball screen, in the half court, they weren't as good, but certainly ball screen. He had a great pick and roll center and a great pick and roll point guard. So he did a lot of high ball screen action, a lot of just 2-man game kind of stuff. I don't know how much of that was personnel oriented, that those two guys were so good at it or not, but I think he'll do that in the half court. And then defensively, you will see a lot of on-ball pressure, a lot of man-to-man. Not afraid to go zone if he has to, but he didn't go zone very often this year. And if he has an athletic enough big man, they'll switch all the way through, 1 through 5 if they can. And he really likes scoring in transition, points off turnovers, a lot of pick sixes that the guards would steal and take down the court for a layup or a fast break point. I would say he is. Every coach says it in their opening press conference that they're going to play fast. He, in an ideal world and an ideal roster, will absolutely do that.
It's interesting listening to the podcasts that he's been on over the last few days and how he's adapted his style over the last several seasons, coming off the Minnesota firing and realizing what he needed to do as a head coach, how to evolve, how to mature, how to grow, how to learn. I mean, the fact that he's 42 years old and he has 13 seasons of head coaching experience under his belt already, I think you can get lost in the fact that you just look at his resume and you say, okay, 4 tournaments in 13 years. He hasn't been to the second weekend of the tournament. And you might just look at that and get frustrated real quick if you don't know the minutia, if you don't understand some of the context of that. And you talk about what New Mexico was coming off of the season before he got there. You talk about how hard it is just in general to win at a job like Minnesota. where where were some of the areas you felt like he evolved, Geoff, over the last couple of seasons to then lead New Mexico to back-to-back Mountain West titles and really just ascend the ladder, especially in the last 2 years?
Sure, I would say that it was tough. The Mashburn Patino bond was there before Richard Pitino and Jamal Mashburn Jr. But he was so guard oriented and guard heavy, as I said, and I think he will be still. But he started last year, and they made an NCAA tournament, so it wasn't like they were bad. But last year, 2024 season, they started 3-6-2 guards, 6'2", 6'2", and 6 foot, and they weren't very good defensively as a result of it. A lot of it just had to do with size, not that they weren't trying to be good defensively. This year, I would say he evolved into. It wasn't a naivety or an ignorance to the fact that they had to play better defense, but I think he evolved to understand two things, really. One is they needed to get bigger and better on defense, and he started committing more, I think, to defense, even though they still would love run and gun and score in the 80s every game if they can. But I would say, too, that he's taking the whole coaching staff with him, right? He is taking everybody from New Mexico to Xavier with him. And it is a good coaching staff that is coming too, by the way, including former Air Force head coach Dave Pilipovich, who is just one of my all-time favorite people in the world. But you're going to like all the people. I think he became really well aware of not having to do it all himself and relying on a staff like that. The staff continuity has been so good. The staff he's bringing with him has been the same staff for 3 of his 4 seasons. The entire staff. We're talking Peyton Stevens. She's the director of operations. She kind of runs the whole show behind the scenes. There's one of those at every basketball program. Peyton Stevens is going to run Xavier basketball far more than Richard Pitino or Jack Pitino ever will. She's coming along. Like his video coordinator's coming. His 4 assistants are coming. He found I guess some peace or some acceptance that, like, surrounding yourself not just with some good assistants that can go recruit, but finding the right fits within your own leadership team like he has. I think he really realizes how important that is, and that's why he's bringing everybody with him. I'm telling you, like, within probably 12 hours, he took the job Tuesday night, and I think by Wednesday morning, all 4 assistants, his director of ops and video coordinator were all on board. Like, tell us when we go. And I think that was a little bit of maturity. Not that he didn't have good assistants before or didn't trust them. I think he realized that he needs to lean on them more than maybe he did when he first got here.
Geoff, I appreciate you taking some time today to talk about Coach Patino. Is there anything else you feel like maybe Xavier fans or the rest of the Big East should know that you haven't mentioned already? Something about Patino, whether it's fan engagement, anything on the court. I'll leave the door open. Is there anything you feel like we haven't covered that anybody should know?
Yeah, I'll say 2 things real quick. While he is Rick Pitino's son, and he even said that at the NCAA tournament last week, he got asked like 4 or 5 Rick Pitino questions. He got up and he's like, "Hey, do you guys know Rick Pitino's my dad?" And he'll joke around about it a little bit. It's not his necessarily favorite topic to have lived an entire life of being Rick Pitino's son. He credits his dad for a lot of who he is as a basketball coach, but not the most credit. He gives the most credit to the year or 2 that he left his dad as an assistant at Louisville and went to play or coach for Billy Donovan. And he saw a guy who was extremely loyal to his dad in Billy Donovan from the player coach relationship, and learned from Billy Donovan that, man, I watched my whole life, my dad, who is an obsessive, manic, intense coach, a yeller. You've seen on the documentary. I watched my dad do this his whole life, and I thought that's how you're supposed to do it. Then he sees Billy Donovan, who makes sure you have a little bit of time with your family, who makes sure you're a little bit calmer. He's not as much a yeller as Rick Pitino, and he credits the 2 years he spent with Billy Donovan when he replaced Shaka Smart on the Florida staff for a couple of years, really with more than his dad in some ways, forming who he is now as a coach. And he's just not, while they're very similar, him and his dad, and they look a lot alike for the age, especially, he credits his time with Billy Donovan for molding him as a not just Rick Pitino kind of mold. The other thing I'll say, and this speaks to the same thing, he is a quarter zip guy. He does not want to wear the high dollar suit that his dad does. He told me in that podcast yesterday he's a little worried about going to a Big East with Danny Hurley. If assuming Willard gets there, Rick Pitino all wearing suits. He is one of his first jobs won't be hitting the transfer portal. It'll be calling up every other coach and saying, "Look, let's get together, let's bond together." And we are team quarter zip. We are not going to be wearing suits all the time like my dad does. He hates it, and I'm with him, man. I don't understand the idea of having to wear a suit in an arena of yelling people and sweaty basketball players, and then there's one guy that's supposed to wear a suit. So I've never understood it, and he is 100% on board with quarter zip, team logo quarter zip, and not the $5,000 suits that his dad wears. So there you go.
Okay,
That's important stuff to know.
Well, so that reminds me, I do have one last thing because I think the Xavier fan base has quickly adopted the Italian heritage of the Patino family. Does Richard Pitino lean into the Italian heritage?
He does. So look, in New Mexico, I'll tell you this, but he can adapt. Like he can also adapt.
Well, I think the Xavier fan base has very much adapted too pretty quickly. I think everybody's become a dual citizen here in the last 5 days.
So I think he in New Mexico, it's all about green chili here. And in New Mexico, you spell chili Chile because it's the pepper. It's not the Chili. Now, other places do spell the pepper with an I at the end. Not here in New Mexico. That's important to us, okay? And the best chili in the world is here in New Mexico. He kind of played along he said it on the podcast yesterday.
Yeah, he did.
Played along for 2 years. Like, yes, we love the chili here. We love the chili. They did not love the chili here. But by year 2, converting into year 3, he bought into the chili. So I don't know if Skyline chili is the thing or not, but whatever is quintessential, Cincinnati or quintessential Xavier basketball, he will adapt to it. He will buy in. It may not be at first. He may just pay it lip service at first, but like he's going to adapt. He's going to be all in. And I'll tell you what, you guys got the best ball boy in town coming too, because Jack Patino is going to win over that entire fan base. And you guys got a good one. And not too many people do exit interviews with local media after they leave the program like he's done. And it's really hard for the bitter Lobo fans here to really hate the guy right now. And some of them want to, right? The coach just left the program after a lot of success, and they want to be mad a little bit, and he's not making it easy. So you guys got a good one. You're going to enjoy it.
Jeff, I appreciate you taking some time today. Thanks again. Tell people where they can follow you, read your work.
Yeah. I'm at abqjournal.com is where you can follow some of the work on social, usually X and Blue Sky both. You can find me at Geoff Grammer. It is Jeff with the G. I spell that wrong, and I'm a reporter who spells grammar wrong too. It's an ER at the end. So, let me have it. I understand. So he certainly did plenty. So I appreciate you guys though for having me on. And like I said, man, I had 4 years of covering a pretty good, pretty laid back coach. I don't know what I'm about to be covering for 4 years, but for however long he's there, you guys are going to enjoy it.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you, man.